I thought the journey that I talked to you about is a little bit of what Kent Police and how we do what we do, which of course is public service delivery, therefore relevant to all of us, and how we've been using Idea Drop as one of our key tools, and I mean key tools to become independently assessed, and I'll come to that at the end as well, one of the best forces in the land. So I talk to you from somebody who's got the privilege of leading a big organisation, best part of 6,500, 7,000 people, if you count all of our volunteer staff as well, in the public space, and we're doing incredibly well. And I stress independently assessed rather than the chief just talking about his own force at that level. So if we can go to the first slide, please. So I'm sure all of you, in wherever you're working, when somebody says to you, what's our strategic document, what's the policy look like, what is your organisation all about, if you've got it all on one page and everything, I mean everything at strategic level is on one page, then I think we're on literally the same page here. This is Kent Police on one page. Now, when I came here many years ago from London, when I asked that same question, I think it was about an 87-page document, and you had to work out what was the priorities for the organisation. We're really clear around this. And you, as you're looking at the slide, document that's headed the Kent Police mission, that is about what we do as a public service. The blue, as you can see, the first class service, protecting and serving the people of Kent. If that's not the job of the police, I don't know what is. The sort of limey bit talks about our vision. I don't need to go through that in detail with you, but all of your organisation should have a mission, vision, values and priorities, or something similar, I am sure. The priorities in green, again, you will be able to understand those from a policing perspective. I know there are other forces on the line. They will be very similar to yours, I am sure. But I wonder then, when we start getting into how we use Idea Drop, you will see, therefore, on the very front page, we have our values that are all about opening up how we operate internally and, very importantly, of course, externally. Now, if that's on your very front of how you run your organisation, a values-based organisation, and this then has to turn into reality rather than just something on a page, then I think, again, the organisation's in a really strong place to deliver outstanding, which is our aspirations, service. You jump across the screen, the values led to the poster that's headed do the right thing. If the mission is what we do, the values are, and the cultural poster is how we do it. And that is where Idea Drop, as I unpick it in due course, has been fundamental to continuing to build a phenomenal culture that pretty much means everybody in the workforce is valued and regarded and understood and has an equal voice, shaping our service delivery, which again, I repeat, has come out as a pretty impressive public service delivery at the moment. A couple of headlines around do the right thing as you look at it. One, it was created by my staff, not something done in a locked room by some bigger and better brains than mine, not something done by me, but something done by our force. And you will see already, I hope, the link to how do you get 6,500, 7,000 people to contribute to the ideas to shape how we operate. Idea Drop is phenomenal in that regard. So what it allowed us to build was the cultural principles that everybody in the force signs up for, everybody agrees with internally and externally. Bring the two together and you end up with those three pillars in the middle that are our strategic priorities. They have been the same for all of my time as Chief Constable, 6.5 years, which means the bit of the top that you can see consistency of message. Again, you reflect on maybe where we've all come from in our careers. How many times do the people at the top, dare I say it, keep changing what is a priority, keep changing what's most important? And you have to have flexibility within, in my view, a very top level, high strategic position. So victims and witnesses at the heart of everything we do, provide a quality service, and importantly, a culture whereby people are trusted, empowered, and skilled to feel and do the right thing. So you'll all be talking about, I'm sure, blame culture and people allowed to make mistakes and everything else. Well, we're not perfect, but we are pretty good at doing things here now, big, bold ideas. For example, do we have a joint operating control room with other forces that may or may not improve our service, which came from some ideas on Idea Drop. We looked at it and it was not efficient and effective. So we decided not to do it. So you start getting into a culture where if the only thing you really try are the things that are doomed to success, in my humble view, you are narrowing down your innovation, your creativity, and your ambition. You've got to be prepared to fail. The expert bit around that is spotting when it will fail at an early stage and be efficient, therefore, in stopping it. But those three things are at the very heart of what we do. And if you stop any member of my staff, as the HMIC who inspect us do, you ask them and they will tell you our three priorities are those three things. Under that, for those who are not in policing talking here, we have something called a control strategy that identifies under those three broad headlines where our biggest risks are, crime type, or whatever it may or may not be. And of course, that allows us to focus our resource into those. But the three big pillars haven't and do not and will not change because I think they're right for policing. Moving forward, if I may, to the next slide. So you can make policing as complicated as you want, and the job of a chief officer or a senior officer or police staff in all of our respect is for all of our officers and staff to make it as clear and unambiguous as possible. And it is hard and it is challenging and it is complicated, but not if you make it that hard for everybody, you're going to get yourself in a muddle. Here are, in my view, the absolute keys to delivering successful public service. And they are, number one, never forget ever that delivering a phenomenal service as a public servant is the most important thing we have to do. The day we forget that as public servants in this room, we, you, I, are all in the wrong organisation. We are not better than the public. We are the public and we deliver a public service. The clue is in the name, gents and ladies. And then you start unpacking, well, if that's a broad statement, who delivers it? Who is your most important asset? And again, the days that people think that the people on the command corridor are more important than a brand new PC or police staff or PCSO joining today, you've lost the plot. Everybody is equally as important. Everybody does a different role. And therefore you have to invest hugely in your staff, the most important asset. The buildings, the cars, the kit, they're all important, not as important as the people, in my view. Thank you. So we wanted to do something bold, brave, and different. So if the mission is what we do, the culture is how we do it, what is the vehicle to encourage our staff to think and be very different? And we use the infinity principles designed here again by my staff and my officers with regard to what we think it means to us. And this again is where Idea Drop comes in. So if you just look at the darker green element here, no boundaries at all, other than, of course, we have to be legislative, we have to be legal, you've only got so much resources, all of that sort of stuff, we accept that. But you should have no boundaries to inhibit our thinking, creativity, and innovation, or indeed our aspirations. And you'll see in a moment, when I come to maybe one or two of the examples that have come from Idea Drop, how we have done things dramatically different here, but how some really simple things equally have had a massive impact on how well our officers and staff do the job. So this is driven everything that we've done using Idea Drop, but it's also driving everything we're going to continue to do and use Idea Drop, as no doubt all of you are going forward thinking, what will our organisation look like after COVID-19 secure comes down to a different position when the vaccine's in place, however long that takes, and what does the new normal look like? I know in my organisation, it will look nothing like it did before COVID-19. It'll probably be half of where we are now and half of where we were beforehand, because we can now be much more efficient, much more effective to deliver our services. Who will know how we do that? My 6,500 staff. How do I ask them? one of the key elements. How do I task them? How do I challenge them? All of that will come through idea drop. So again, this is Kent specific, but I think it applies to any public service or indeed any organisation if you want to do this. But you have to be, and I mentioned the control room a little while ago for the effect, because that's a multi-million-pound part of our business. But you have to be big enough, strong enough, and bold enough, and at the top of the organisation, strong enough to accept that not everything you do will be successful. I used a Dyson computer, and others down the line, I'm sure, will tell you whether or not they got idea drop right at the first time. But the Dyson all singing, all dancing cleaner, I'm sure James Dyson didn't get that right first time. So are you brave enough? Ask yourself the questions. Are you brave enough to do something that you bring back to your boss and say, it didn't work, I'm sorry? Interesting concept, but if you really want to be bold and brave, that's the culture you have to have, in my view. An idea drop, of course, is fundamental to that sort of business. So moving forward to the next slide, if I may, and then we'll get right into idea drop and some of the answers, but hopefully you're picking up some of it already. So these were key enablers to us becoming, and I'll come to it in the end, to us becoming independently assessed as one of the best police forces in the land for some time now. And we don't have, as police officers and other members will know, we don't have scorecards in a league table or anything remotely like it. But what we do have is something called the Peel Inspection by HMIC FRS, who inspect us like Ofsted inspects anything else. So what we know, this worked in Kent Police, and it may work for you, but it's important you know how it worked for us. So numerical arbitrary performance targets, I got rid of those in 2013. So I'll give you an example to make it really understandable, certainly for me when we were trying to do it and everybody else maybe. So when I took over as chief, we had a target of getting to urban and non-urban calls in 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And you got a green tick or a red cross, depending on whether you got there in 90 minutes, 59 seconds, or 20 minutes and 1 second. Nowhere will we test it nationally or indeed locally on the quality of the service delivery. In my view, what a load of nonsense. I want my officers to get there quickly. I want them to get there safely, and then I want them to do a brilliant job. So I have that data, which helps me understand the resourcing and where to deploy my resources, but not to race against the clock to get a green tick or a red cross. And we have no other targets. My control room do not have a target with regard to how closely or quickly you answer a 999 call, or indeed a 101 call. I have the data, but we have a culture of get to it as quickly as you possibly can and deliver a quality service. The next bullet point, of course, goes directly to why we're talking today about idea drop. It is one of, in my view, the best tools I have seen in 35 years of policing to communicate, listen, and engage at all levels on the same idea or a mixture of ideas, where you can then get a group collective idea on what's happening. I mentioned the third one, I'm sure you didn't miss. There is absolute recognition in my force, and it should be, I think, in everybody's organisation, that everybody has an important role to play. So everybody who works for me, is here to solve the public's problems. They are a leader in society, they're a leader in my organisation. Therefore, recognise we do different jobs with different responsibilities, but all of them equally important. The next bit, if you are going to say we have a culture where you believe that your staff are the most important asset, you've got to put money where the talk is. And therefore, there has to be a continuous investment into support and training. But particularly, ask the staff what they need, as well as, of course, we do what we know they have to have. And there is some mandated training, as you know, only too well from a national perspective and such like. And then we open up the new technology. How are we doing things different? We have live chat, we have online. All of my staff now wear body-worn cameras. All of them carry tasers, give or take. And we have mobile first, which is a device now that we have even more people using idea drop because they can use it remotely on the mobile first device as of before, when we first implemented it, you had to be at a desktop to use it. And you will see as I come to the next slide or so, how the numbers have increased dramatically. So they were key enablers for us. I'm sure they're relevant to any police service, but you know, I think they're transferable pretty much to any public service organisation. Thanks, Anila. So with all of that set, and I hope the scene set so we understand it, we went hard and fast into idea drop, and we were the first force, and I'm very proud and very pleased to say we were the first force to launch idea drop, as you can see from there. So look now, over 50% of the workforce, over 50% are regularly using idea drop and regularly sharing ideas. So that's a mixture of staff coming up with their own ideas, and I'll come to a couple of examples in a moment where they have absolutely influenced policing and changed my policy on how we do things. So their ideas, and you know how it works, everybody can see it, everybody can like it. So in effect, what I see now, when I'm not on idea drop personally myself, which I am, but what I see now is I get brought to me the top 10, top 20 ideas, because the system generates the best ideas, which is a phenomenal way of doing it. Others on my behalf look at every idea, but I get to see the ones that my staff like the most. The second bit, and we use it sparingly because I don't want to overuse it because of the importance of it, but we have used the challenge on about 4 occasions. But I use it at a very strategic level, and I'm about to use it in the next month or so. When I get more information on something, I'll share with you in a second. But I say to them things like, I want to change the policing model because of, as we all know in public sector for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, we have got a load less money. We've got to make massive savings. How am I going to do this? What can we do? And how do we do it differently? So I asked 6,500 people that question through a challenge. I'm going to ask them a similar one, as you would imagine, the reference I made to earlier about how do we do things differently post COVID-19. I'll be asking the force exactly that question. So some of the benefits that we've seen as a pretty large organisation are efficient and meaningful engagement with our staff in a really, really brilliant way. So I put out the problem, not try and solve the solution. I ask our officers and staff, and they have come up with the answers over and over and over again. More innovation has come through everything that we're talking about, looking at the existing solutions going forward, wiki-like system, etc. And this, for me, that's all technical, a lot of that. But this is the bit that is the biggest element for me. I know my officers and staff belong to, feel that they belong to, are engaged, feel important, and know where they fit in the organisation, where they can absolutely shape it. So let me give you 3 examples, and the one that's mentioned on the screen is the 9-point plan, which I'll come to in a second. But at a more local level, we give out for officers mobile devices to keep them out in the street long, be more engaged with the public, get access to regular information, be more dynamic on the street. We give them smart devices to do that. They came back and said, a really simple thing we need, boss, is an in-car charger for it because they don't last very long. Now, simple idea drop came in, 3,500 people look at it in the current numbers, and nearly everyone went, what a great idea. We implemented it immediately. The impact on our staff at a most junior level was phenomenal for anyone to see without any doubt at all. We've got a go-to knowledge bank created now, whether it's people working or people retiring and leaving, sharing ideas. We often find as people leave the door, they want to tell you the best idea. So we've got that in. But the 9-point plan goes to the very heart of, if you think your staff are your most important asset, then prove it. So this is officers and staff who are assaulted executing their duty. I have never accepted, nor will I ever accept, that it's okay for the public to assault my officers or staff. And it is officers and staff, whether it be PCSOs, detention officers, or police front-facing police officers. I do not accept it at all. So Idea Drop said to me, it was an inspector at the time, if that's true, Governor, and we do believe you, why don't you do something different with regard to when you prosecute offenders? I asked the question, of course, what do you mean by that? And now every one of my officers who is assaulted, officers or staff, they are treated like a victim who is a member of the public. They do not prosecute their own case. They do not have to see the offender across the interview table. They do not have to interview him or her. They do not have to take fingerprints and DNA samples from people who have spat and assaulted at them very badly. Another police officer does that, or indeed a civilian investigator. So the 9-point plan is about their welfare. It is about making sure they're okay, and they become a witness or victim in a case where they've been assaulted. The impact that has had on my officers and staff is phenomenal. It was an 8-point plan. That was the original idea from Idea Drop. But because you empower your staff, somebody else then said, and wouldn't it be even more important, boss, if you do an impact statement, like a victim impact statement, that goes to the court from the force, from the chief, telling the magistrate, or indeed the Crown Court judge when it's very serious, the impact assaulting officers and staff has on the individual, their family, or indeed the workplace. And I do that every single time. I'm signing far too many, by the way, but I do it all the time. That came from Idea Drop. Didn't come from anywhere else. It came from Idea Drop. And the reason it's so powerful is all of the officers and staff saw it, they liked it, and therefore we implemented it. Where has it come alive then? Through recognition. So we have an annual ceremony. We're not going to have one this year because it's all a bit difficult getting lots of people together, albeit you're doing it really well down the line. We'll have one which will be a double year next year. But the Infinity Award that has come from Idea Drop and elsewhere is one of the bespoke individual awards recognizing this. Idea Drop, Kent was nominated to be considered in the first world-class policing awards. That's the level that this is operating at. And we have other forces and other agencies, Transport Police Cleveland, Derbyshire, Essex, Surrey, Sussex from memory police forces, I think some fire and rescue services, some mental health trusts have now taken on Idea Drop. It absolutely works in my view. And then to stop and conclude, if I go to the next slide, this is what I talked about with regard to independent inspection. So you will have heard from me, and I hope it makes sense, but look, this, and if anybody's been inspected by Ofsted or anything similar where you work, we have the same through HMIC FRS. So you know, everyone, they come in with hindsight, which is a lot easier to do, by the way, than deal with it here and now. They play a hugely important role in reassurance from a public perspective point of view. But it's a lot easier to test what we do after the event rather than. But this is the totality of policing. Everything. You can ask me anything. They inspect it through these 3 pillars: efficient, effective, and legitimacy. And what you're looking at is a 4-5-year history of Kent Police. And Idea Drop, as you know, came in at 15-16. So you will see it's played a fundamental role in some of these marks, if not all of these marks. The gold dots, yellow dots mean we are achieving it. And you will look down there and see there are not many circles that are not filled out. Please remember the context of this is service delivery at a time that policing is never seen has much resources taken out of it. This is the period of comprehensive spending review. So the context of a huge amount, I lost about 1/3 of my money. That's pretty much it. And about 84% of my money goes for my staff. So we lost a huge amount of people. The context and the demand went through the roof, and our service delivery was better than ever. So efficiency, I take you up to 2018. The highest score is outstanding. We're outstanding. Effectiveness, the lowest score is inadequate, requires improvement, good, and then outstanding. Effectiveness, our lowest score is good. We have no areas graded as requires improvement. And therefore, we have a little better to go with effectiveness, because I'm sure we can get to outstanding in that category as well. But then maybe, up for argument, I used to say this, by the way, 10, 15 years ago, so I haven't just started saying this since we've become outstanding at legitimacy. I said it many, many, many years ago. For me, the most important measure in policing. There is an argument, how can you be efficient and effective if you do not have integrity at the highest level? Legitimacy. If you don't have the trust and confidence of your public, all of your public, legitimacy. If you do not treat your staff in the workplace in the most phenomenal and fantastic and respectful way, legitimacy. It comes back to, if you do that to your staff, idea drops a key to it, and then you deliver public service. So legitimacy, we are, and I'm very proud that my officers have achieved this and my staff have achieved this, out of 43 forces, independently inspected, we are the only force outstanding legitimacy currently, and we are the only force that has had it for 4 years. That tells me, and I hope tells everybody down the line, that we are doing something not too badly. And it is really, really, really important. So what the HMIC said about idea drop when we achieve this delivery are things like the following. It has been introduced in the force and has received a very positive response. It's in their inspection reports. You can no doubt get copies of it. The senior managers set them challenges in the way that they ask the force to help them do better things. We found that this means that their way of raising issues is being very well received across the force. It is allowing the force to be more effective, more timely, and more innovative. It carries on to say that the officers and staff are using it uniformly and view it very, very positively. It has been promoted nationally as an example of good practice. The data, the performance speaks for itself. So I am purely here today to talk to you about Kent Police. I'm purely here today to show, I hope, how what I'm saying is based on reality and delivery. And I'm here today to say we are continually looking at here new, innovative, different ways of doing business. Idea drop in 15-16 was different for us, and we will continue to use it going forward as I change the force into a delivery of the same 3 key pillars, but in a more agile, fluid, flexible way that COVID-19 has pretty much caused us to look at in one way, but I think it would be remiss of us if we do not look at now catching the best practice from that and continue to move forward.